Hello, welcome back to episode 101 of what you may know as the Early Parenting Podcast and is rebirthed as the Happy Baby Show. Now, I'm going to talk about the reason behind the name change shortly, but first of all, let me say it is so good to be back in your ears. It was a very long coffee break. So, to give it a bit of context, if you're new here or if you are a long-term listener, my last episode that I did was when Georgie was about 1 month old, and I said I was going to be taking, I think I said a 6-week hiatus. Well, that 6 weeks really blew out, and now Georgie's 10 and a half months. So, look, I'm going to explain a little bit about why that has happened, but the crux of it is that life got really busy. So much has happened in the last 10 months. Shortly after Georgie was born, Victoria went into, I think, what was supposed to be a snap lockdown, COVID related, that ended up being, I think, the longest one to date. I can't even remember. I tried to block that part of our lives out, but I feel like we were in lockdown for 3 months. So during the time that I had a little newborn, I also had a 6-year-old boy who was homeschooling, and Ted, my middle son, my 4-year-old, was also unable to go to childcare. So I had 3 children at home, which wasn't really what I envisioned when I had a newborn. And so I was juggling this new dynamic of having another little baby to look after, as well as meeting homeschooling, as well as doing all of the kinder things and all the things that Ted needed, and, running a household. And also, I was also maintaining and supporting all of my beautiful members inside my membership, the Happy Baby Code, which, that's where my priorities lay over those 10 months. So unfortunately, the podcast had to take a little bit of a back seat. But I'm back. I'm back, and there is a new name of the podcast, The Happy Baby Show. Now, you might be wondering why I've moved from the Early Parenting Podcast to The Happy Baby Show. So you may have heard me before when I mentioned that my membership is the Happy Baby Code membership. I have my program, the Happy Baby Program. My philosophy is the code and cracking the code to a happy baby. That is why I wanted to align the podcast to align with what my very philosophy is, the code to a happy baby. And so the Happy Baby Show was born. My philosophy is that in order to have a happy baby, we need to understand and look at every single element of our baby's world. So rather than just focusing on single topic parts of our baby, so rather than looking at just their sleep, rather than looking at just their health and development, rather than looking at just feeding, why don't we understand all of those together and nail all of those areas in terms of understanding the skills that we need to know, understanding the knowledge that we need to know, so that when we are meeting all of our baby's needs in terms of their sleep, in terms of their feeding, and in terms of their health and development, that, my friends, is the code to having a happy and thriving and settled and well slept and well fed and all of the things baby. So a lot is staying exactly the same in terms of this podcast. So for anyone who has been a previous listener, all of my episodes are bite-sized, easy to digest. You can listen on the go. You can listen while you're cooking dinner. You can even listen while the kids are crawling around. And everything is bite-sized because I know that it is so much easier to digest these small bits of information so that you can listen to it quickly, learn, and get on with your day. And it also helps you to retain this information because I don't know about you, but if I try and listen to a really long podcast, I listen to it in really small parts, and that can really mean that the learning it's a little bit disjointed. That's how I find it anyway. Now, the podcast is also going to run in seasons now. So rather than the episodes being absolutely every single week, they'll run in seasons of roughly around, 10 to 12 episodes per season. And the aim is to be recording them and delivering them in line, I should say, with a Victorian school term because, hashtag mum life. I have to navigate. Soon next year, I'll have 2 in school, which just blows my little mind. But at the moment, I have Ted in kinder and I have Max in school in grade 1 this year. So 2 next year. That's crazy. Anyway, But there's something else that I want to announce, because a part of this, what I'm calling the relaunch, it's a relaunch of the Early Parenting Podcast into the Happy Baby Show, but also a relaunch into, after a very long break, is I'm going to be kicking off this podcast with an episode every single day this week. So there is going to be 7 episodes in a row, and then every single week there'll be a new episode during the season released on a Wednesday. On top of my daily podcast release this week, I have a very exciting giveaway happening every day from Monday through to Friday this week that I'm going to be chatting all about over on my Instagram. So head on over and follow me if you don't already at Jen Butler Early Parenting, because I'm going to be releasing all the details on how you can enter each day into an amazing Mother's Day giveaway. I'm very excited to be releasing all of this information starting tomorrow, so make sure to head on over and give me a follow and follow in to see how you can get involved in this amazing giveaway for one of the most, let's say, one of the most important days on the calendar, Mother's Day, of course. We rock, right, mamas? Now, what I would also so love you to do is to go into, especially if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, you'll have to forgive me if I don't know the rating system on Spotify or Google Play. I hope that you can rate, but I would so love you to leave me a rating for the podcast. So just a quick review, you can even just pop in your rating, and allocate the stars. It takes 2 seconds. And the beauty about it is that when you rate the podcast, it tells the wonderful world of Apple that it is a podcast that's worth listening to. So if you think that this podcast is worth listening to, it's going to help to get into as many families' ears as possible. And that is the goal. I want this podcast to be able to share both my professional and my personal experience in raising a baby and a toddler and into the later years, and all of the, navigating, having school-age children, all of the things. I want to be able to support you, and I want you to hit as many families' ears as possible so they too can get some support and guidance that they need to make your parenting experience as great as it can be. Because when you understand your baby or your toddler, it means that you are meeting their needs and they are happy, and a happy baby equals a happy parent. So if you could take 2 seconds to rate the podcast, that would be amazing. Anyway, I am going to be back in your ears tomorrow with episode 102, where I'm going to be talking about how I use, but also don't use routine. That might sound very conflicting, but I will explain more in tomorrow's episode. So